Are you here? I knew you were because you know that this is the place to be. Tuned into the Paul Leslie Hour. Thank you for watching and or listening. You're about to orally observe Paul's third interview with singer-songwriter, recording artist, entertainer, and musician Scott Kirby. Yep, and yep. Scott's one of the very talented artists on the Little Flock Music record label, and he's got a much-anticipated new album due out in 2024. By the way, did you know that this show's made possible by you, the listener? Be a patron of the spoken arts. Go to www.thepaulleslie.com/support and help continue to make this fully independent media possible. So, let's go down to the roasting room in Bluffton, South Carolina. It's time for the third go-around with Scott Kirby right here on The Paul Leslie Hour. Enjoy the show.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm here in beautiful downtown Bluffton, South Carolina. We are up on the second floor on the roasting room, just prior to a gig with Scott Kirby. This is his third interview on this show.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
For making the time.
Good to be back.
Absolutely.
Here
So
beautiful Bluffton.
Absolutely. Have you played here on the Carolina coast?
I played a number of times back in the day in the Charleston area. I've played here at the Roasting Room at least twice and possibly 3 times before COVID. This is my first time back since COVID hit in March of 2020, I guess. So great little listening room.
It looks like the perfect place for you to play.
It is. It's a great singer-songwriters type of venue, about 85 seats. Yeah, wonderful acoustics. That's great.
You know, something that comes up a lot in your songs is this Irish ancestry of yours.
Right.
And I'm just hoping you can tell us what influence do you think being Irish has had on you?
Well, interestingly, I listened to one of the old interviews yesterday, and we talked about this slightly. And I believe I said that my family came over from Ireland to Newfoundland during the potato famine, which I've since found is not true. They actually came from Ireland to Newfoundland in the late 1700s, so much earlier. So, I mean, the Irish have a tremendous history of musicianship, songwriting, storytelling, humor, and the Newfoundlanders are very well known for their music and storytelling. And so I think the combination of the two cultures in my background, the Irish and the Newfoundland, probably has to be somewhat instrumental for my style of songwriting and my humor and my storytelling, I suppose.
And I think that in addition to things that are really very pensive, there's a lot of stuff it's humorous that you do. How important do you think humor is in this life of ours?
Well, when I was a kid, very young, 3, 4 years old, there was a lot of spatting in my house. I was the firstborn, so I was the first child in the house. I'm sure my parents were getting used to having a little creature running around ruining their lives. And I'm sure when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, when they weren't always getting along, I know I became a very funny child. My mother's talked about it, that I was always trying to lighten up the mood in the house and get them laughing if they happened to be arguing, or if I'd gotten myself into trouble. My mother said I would do hilarious things even before I remember. When I was 3, she told me I hid in the basement once for a whole day and didn't tell them, and things like that I thought were fun. But I've always been a big fan of humor. I was a big fan of I thought really when I was younger I might want to become a comic. I used to watch the Johnny Carson show late in the night and watch all the great comics, come on. And I was a class clown in my senior class. We just had my class reunion. I was reminded I was the class clown as well as the class president. So I had so humor is a big part of coping. I have no doubt about that. And I love to laugh. I love hearing funny stories, the absurdity of life, to balance the tragedy and the horrid things. And I couldn't survive without it. I know that. So, and to tell you the truth, I do find that people that don't have a very good sense of humor, sometimes they have trouble coping.
Yeah.
So I think it's really essential.
Interesting. Now, I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, before we were doing this interview, I received a text from Scott, which I've never gotten somebody who said this. He said, "Bring it on, baby." And I'm not used to that.
At my age, bring it on. What else? What could possibly go wrong?
Right. And do you think that as the years go on, a person does tend to become more honest?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And there's a great book written on character by David Brooks from the New York Times. And he said, when people are young and they're all about resume building.
Right. When
you're older, you're all about having a proper obituary, and your character is your destiny. We've learned that from the ancient Greeks and the Stoics. Character is your destiny, honesty. So I've not had the best level of character in a few situations in my life that I regret somewhat, but I try to live my life with a level of character, and I really don't have anything to hide at this age or much to sell. So you might as well be as honest as you can. And I notice it with other older artists when they're interviewed in their 60s, 70s, they're
right.
laying it out there. So
there's a song of yours that I want to talk about. It is just a fantastic song. I think it might be one of your best. And also, I've gotten emails from people who have said, this is your greatest song. When we did that kind of unplugged show, I said, can you play Lucky Man? And you said, not lucky enough?
Right.
Lucky Enough.
Right.
And that song's resonated with a lot of people. I've actually seen people who've covered it.
Yes.
Tell me, that song, are you kind of in agreement that that's one of your best work?
Yes. Somehow in that song, I don't think musically it's one of my best works, but I think there's something about I captured the bittersweet joy of life in that, the tragedy, the happiness. Everything's not perfect. Lucky enough. And I don't remember where I was when I wrote it, but I remember the line in there about if you're living your life with the luck of the Irish. And I got that line from watching Meet the Press about 20 years ago when Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the United States Senator from New York, was on. And it was on the anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination. And Tim Russert asked Senator Moynihan, "What do you remember about that day?" And he said, "You cannot grow up Irish without knowing that eventually life will break your heart." And I stole that almost verbatim, that line, to put in the song. And that might have been the impetus for writing the song. I can't recall. But yeah, it's one of the few songs I don't recall really writing. So maybe it was totally honest, I suppose.
I mean this as an absolute compliment. If somebody told me, a lot of those lyrics were from the 1800s, or the melody was based on some type of Irish ballad or something, I would say, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, it's 3/4 time, which is not necessarily an Irish thing. I don't even know. It's a very simple 3/4 time, almost like almost like Sweet Baby James,
right.
Which is 3/4 time. Yeah. So I don't really know where that came from. Then the chorus goes down to a minor chord. Uh, yeah, I don't, you know, sometimes we don't know where these things come from, but I know it did strike a chord with people when it started getting played on Radio Margaritaville. It went kind of crazy there for a year or two with the CD sales, and so it obviously struck people. And I've seen at least 10 or 15 sailboats around the country and powerboats named Lucky Enough since I wrote that. People write me all the time.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up Radio Margaritaville. There's somebody that I'm hoping you can talk about for a bit. I don't know if he gets the credit that he deserves for all of the work he has done promoting independent artists, independent record labels. And I'm talking about, to me, he will always be the voice of Radio Margaritaville.
Right.
Steve Huntington. Maybe you could say a word about him.
Well, Steve Huntington, and I mention Radio Margaritaville in just about every show I do because, and I got a chance to talk to Jimmy Buffett about this at a show backstage in New York a couple of years ago when he came and played with Pete Mayer and I actually. And I said, I'm really glad you started Radio Margaritaville because I wouldn't have a career driving around the country doing this without the radio station. But it was Steve Huntington who heard that song Lucky Enough. And he was playing a lot of me back on the station when it was just an internet station before it hit satellite radio. Fortunately, I had a relationship with satellite radio before that. If I'm not mistaken, there was a station called the Vacation Station.
That's right.
Before, and they were playing two of my songs. So when the merger came, however that business situation developed, where Radio Margaritaville went into that slot, I already had some familiarity with the people in New York. So, you know, with Steve's influence and, you know, I can't say enough about him. I literally would not be doing this because without some mass media support, it's really hard to even be traveling around the country playing 100-seat places like this. I mean, I play in 40 states a year, and it's you know, that radio help, that radio support has been essential. So he's a great guy and a real pro. Been a radio person since he was in college. You know, he's and I still see him all the time, and consider him a good friend. So.
I always like to just check. So Scott, would you say that you're a creature of routine?
Well, in the sense of songwriters, you know, the Nashville songwriters, if you mean it's artistically, they tend to have a routine. They're very routine. They go in an office or they get together every week and co-write, and you know, some of them write every day. That is not my routine, and by the way, that's not necessarily a common routine for people that aren't professional songwriters, song pitchers in Nashville. More the touring singer-songwriter like, you know, James Taylor and name 1,000 people. I've read a lot about them. Their routine typically is to which is exactly what I do, is to keep notes in a book, and then every 2 or 3 years, and I'm ready to do a new batch of songs, I go away by myself 2-3 weeks and complete solitude. That is my routine. That's the way I've done it. This is my 9th album coming up. That's the way I've written all the songs since I've been doing this for you know, I think I did my first album in 1993. So that's my routine, but it's not a routine in the sense of, you know, that discipline going in, writing every day. You know, some writers say write every day. That's not my, I got touring and, you know, got all kinds of other things going on. So, yeah.
So this new record, it's going to be coming. So this new record, it's going to be coming out April 1st, 2023.
Yes.
All right. And so there will be a pre-order at some point?
Yes. Yeah, we this was supposed to come out at Christmas. When I went there in February to Nashville to do the first 2 or 3 weeks recording, I had COVID, the engineer, and they had COVID. So we got a very late start. A lot of the work has been done since I've been away, but I'm going back there Monday to spend 3 or 4 days. And hopefully by the time I leave there next week, almost all the tracks will be recorded and the vocals done. And then the engineer and producer can, mix it, master it, the cover and all that stuff that takes months to do. So.
Now, something that was on this most recent album that really caught my ear, I think you did it very well. You have always been a little bit, self-critical about your voice.
Right.
But your ability at interpreting a standard from the Great American Songbook, The Summer Wind,
Right.
You did a fantastic job. And I mean, this is a song that if you compare the other people who sang it, people known for their vocals, Frank Sinatra, Wayne
Right.
Newton, Julio Iglesias recorded it. What kind of inspired you to want to interpret a standard?
It wasn't my idea. I would never tackle singing a song by Frank Sinatra recorded with a 100-piece orchestra. But my wife at the time, who was English, had never heard that song. And I think one day I might have been playing it, and she said, "That's the most, lovely song."
Yeah.
And she had no preconceived Frank Sinatra thing in her head. So she said, "You should play that song." And I said, "Are you joking?" I mean, and I played her the original with a big band arrangement and the modulation in the middle. And so I started thinking to myself, well, what would he do with this tune? The way he interpreted Up on the Roof, for instance, is one of my favorite songs of his, the old Carole King song. So I worked on it for 3 or 4 days, and I said, you know what? This isn't so bad. And, you can't sound like Frank Sinatra, but we put it on the list when I went into the studio. The producer loved it. We ended up recording it. And as it turns out, about 2 years later, Willie Nelson did the same thing with that song, did an acoustic version. But that song was actually written in Germany.
Yeah.
If people don't know, but you can go back and Google that from the 50s, and it's this big choral singing this, "The Summer Wind." I mean, it's very dark and monstrous and ominous sounding. And Johnny Mercer, I believe, not only translated the words, but he changed some of the words, and of course the arrangement. But the song, when I went to pay the royalties, I realized there were 2 songwriters. There was Johnny Mercer and then the original German. So the song has quite a history, actually. So
Right.
It's a great song. Sometimes simplicity is the best, and that's a classic example.
Now, it kind of taps into something interesting, because some people that you wouldn't necessarily consider, they're certainly not big band singers, but now James Taylor has done an album of standards. Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney has done.
Right.
Have you always enjoyed those types of songs?
Oh, I have. When I'm on the road to this day, and I'm getting out there, I've got a 3 or 4 hour drive, and might be a little groggy and not in the best mood. I often put the Sinatra station on.
Yeah.
And I love those songs. So, no one, I mean, a lot of those singers, but Sinatra sang with such attitude. Oh my, it's just, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love that kind of music. Yeah, for sure.
Kind of a different subject, but I'm hoping you can tell us about this place where people can stop in Key West, and also there's a lot of live music, the Smokin' Tuna.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, we opened that, I think, 11 years ago now. There were 5 or 6 partners involved, and they've all switched places over the years, but it was the brainchild of Charlie Bauer, who ran the Hog's Breath for 35 years and founded the Key West Songwriters Festival, which is now in its 31st year, I believe. Charlie's always been a big promoter and fan of original music. So he had left the Hog's Breath, and he was looking to start a great music venue in Key West. And after some fits and starts. We found this property, and there were 3 or 4 partners involved, and it's doing great. And it's been about 11 years, and I think now it's considered by most people to be like the music venue in Key West. Between the Songwriters Festival and all the other things that go on down there, Meeting of the Minds is just that's ground zero for Meeting of the Minds. I still play there now and then, special events. I don't play there on a regular schedule anymore, but no, terrific place, and people love it. People love it. It's an outdoor bar with great music, and people love it. So,
If somebody is going to stop in, what do you recommend they get to eat?
oh, I always like the tuna nachos, the smoked tuna dip, and the white bean chili. And I haven't been down there since March. They may have some new things on the menu now, but those were always my 2 favorite: the smoked tuna dip and the white bean chili. But they have a great fish sandwich, and they have a lot of great bar type food there.
Food is very important to me.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Something that has come up in our interviews, but also it comes up in your songs, in your album titles, for just like a side note, like the fact that your conversation with Russ Kunkel had something to do with the kind of inspiration of Bank of Bad Habits relating back to Mark Twain.
Right.
Do you have potentially, you think in the future, possibly a book in you?
I get asked that question a lot, and I had dinner with Tom Rush the other night. We're from the same town. I love Tom Rush, and for 20 years we've both been talking. I mean, he's way above me, and he's a legend, but we've often talked about writing a comical book. I would write a comical book because I mean, I've had a very pleasant career and enjoyed myself and grateful to make a living as a singer-songwriter. But I don't think I have any, I can't be writing like a Bruce Springsteen book. I'm going around the country playing 100, 200 seat venues. So, but I have thought about writing a funny book about the absurdity of this business. And whether you're at the very top or the bottom or somewhere in between, it's a crazy business. The travel, the people you meet, the things that go wrong. I mean, I'm sure every profession has its ups and downs and comical moments, but there is something that seems quite bizarre about trying to do this for a living. And just think of the last 7 or 8 years.
Right.
First, all the revenue has been trying to scratch out a living. All the revenue has been stripped out of albums.
Right.
That started with iTunes, and now the streaming things, you get no money. And then COVID came, and then this year I'm out in California touring, and gas is like $7.26 a gallon. I'm saying, what could go wrong next? But I'm still grateful, and this is where the humor comes in. I thought the title of my book would be Gigs from Hell, 30 Failed Years in the Music Business, but we'll see.
Oh, that's pretty good. It's quick. All right, cool. So, something that has come up again and again in your song lyrics, and it's a big part of you. How would you say Key West has affected you as a person?
Key West, when I moved to Key West, people in Key West told me they thought I was the most normal person they'd ever met in Key West. When I lived in New England, my friends said, "You're the strangest person we know in New England." So that shows you how different New England and Key West are. So Key West was I came from a career in politics. Key West was a very freeing moment for me to throw off the shackles of the real world, working in a very responsible job. The confines of growing up in a place like New England is very traditional. People thought I was insane when I went to Key West to do this in 1988. In fact, there was a major pool, I think, of how long it would take me to come crawling back, and so it was a very freeing moment to move to Key West. One of the best things I've ever done. I don't write as many Key West songs, at this point, because you can only go to that well so many times. I do have one Key West song on the new album called I Lost Another Day last night, which I've been playing quite a bit. But, Key West, you can't live in a place like that without knowing that it doesn't work out so well for so many people who come down there or try to move down there. It's a very difficult place to live. It's very expensive. There are no controls on your life. There's no reason to go home at night. You're at some beautiful bar under the moonlight at 2 a.m. You don't have to drive. Someone is buying you another drink. The moon's over the ocean. That's not necessarily a positive thing for most people, and many people can't handle that lack of discipline and some structure in their lives. It's not worked out very well for a lot of people I've known over the years. So that's really what that song is about. I lost another day last night, and but fantastic place. It still has a lot of magic, and not the same it was 100 years ago or 50 years ago or 20 years ago, but it still has, a lot of magic.
Has there been somebody that you would maybe want to write with at some point that you haven't yet?
Well, I've not written a lot with other, I've written with Peter Mayer, I've written with Russ Kunkel, a couple songs of Roger Guth, and a few other songs with a couple other people. But my writing experience is such a solitary position.
Mm-hmm.
There are a million. I've never really, I'd like to write a song with, Jackson Browne, or I don't really,
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think in those, really think in those terms. I might think I'd like to write I hear a song, well, I wish I could write a song like that, or
Mm-hmm.
I think I really enjoy writing with Russ. Actually, he and I have kind of seem to have some type of vibe where we come up with these song ideas, and Peter Mayer as well. But I really been enjoying. God, I'm glad I've really been enjoying writing with Andy Thompson and Matt Thompson the last 2 albums. We wrote, we worked great together. We wrote Chasing Hemingway's Ghost, This Place Is My Home. We've got a couple tracks on the new album that we co-wrote together. And I'm really comfortable with those guys. And the music side of songwriting is not my strength. The lyrical side is. Those guys musically are they're just so phenomenal, and they've written hundreds of songs. So if someone said, here, you're going to sit down and write a song with, James Taylor or someone, I would probably freak out, freeze up, and not come up with one word. So probably just as well.
Has there been a best compliment that you've received through the years? Not just as a musician.
Well, I'm not sure compliment is the right word, or just the things that strike me the most, I would say, over the years is this has happened quite a few times where people have come up to me and said, I was really sick last year and had a really serious operation. And, one of your CDs got me. I took it in with me when I went under anesthesia. It's the first thing I listened to. I've had that happen quite a number of times. And some of the people that have communicated with me about that, didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's necessarily a compliment, but it's certainly very humbling and touching. And I said to someone a few years ago, not too many people have a job like that where, they don't generally call their car sales and say, I'm going under really serious surgery. I'm glad you sold me that Chevy,
Right.
But that's always struck me is when that happens, it really it's like a hammer to the side of my head. Like, okay, you should consider yourself fortunate.
What would you say has surprised you the most about your life?
Well, I've lived this long that I've been so fortunate. I've been so lucky. Uh, never spent a night in the hospital. I'm blessed with great health. I've had my share of tragedies in my family, like everyone else. But uh, when COVID came, I really surprised myself, and I can actually say this honestly, that it was one of the best year or two of my life. Even though I lost income, I look back at that as the best year or two of my life. And the fact that I'm living abroad, part of the year at this age. I'm from Pennacook, New Hampshire, a little town of 1,500 people, a little mill town, and I've always loved to travel, as I mentioned in an interview with you 20 years ago, and that I've ended up doing this job, and I started very late, doing this 34, 35 years old. But when I was 16 and I was the class clown in my high school class and not a good student, I was very friendly with the two guidance counselors. So I would play my guitar in school. And so my junior year, one of them said, everyone's getting ready to go to college. And I did go to college as well, but they said, Kirby, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to college? What are you going to do? What is your plan? I was not a great student. I was a class clown. I said, my plan, now this is when James Taylor just hit the scene. I said, my plan is to move to Martha's Vineyard and be a songwriter. And they laughed. Well, you can't do that. I said, I know, but that's what I'd like to do. Okay, what are you really going to do? So about 15 years later, I was taking a bus to Logan Airport, and my guidance counselor was on the bus going to work at Harvard. And I had my first CD with me. His name was Dick Donovan. And I hadn't seen him since literally high school. And I'm like 34 years old. And he knew that I'd gone on to become a musician. I said, hey, I have it at my first CD. So I was able to give it to him. And I never held it against him. I love the guy. I love my two guidance counselors. I love so many of my teachers are still my friends. But to me, that was a bit of irony, that I actually said that at 16, and then somewhere along the way, I became very influenced by the writer Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth and Folly or Bliss and all that, and that struck me in my 30s. Is when I realized I wasn't really going off and doing what I was meant to do. So it all worked out. It worked out for me. So that, I guess, is I looked at my yearbook the other day from 1972, and it says under my name, Scott aims to surprise everyone by becoming successful at something. That's true. That's exactly what it says. So
that's great.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
That could be like in a liner note,
right? Right.
So we won't hold you to this. This is the last question I have. As best as you could answer this, what would you say the key to a good life is?
I have a song that I wrote with Annie Thompson on the new record. And the chorus is, work hard, play hard, die easy. Live hard, love hard, die easy. That's the chorus. And so I think that's a simplification, but I think if you do everything you within reason that you like to try, you are passionate about life, you try different things, then you're not going to have regrets when you get old and your time is short. Now, not everyone is as lucky as I've been. People have terrible diseases when they're young. There's all kinds of horrible things that can happen along the way, but that's part of the process of being on the planet. And, I've been very lucky. I mean, I am very, very grateful, but I see a lot of people that live their lives very timidly.
Right.
And who am I to say, how they should live or not live? But I think this has been said 6 billion times, but you only go around once. And I'm not one of those who believes in the afterlife, not to get into religion, but so I'm not waiting to go to some paradise in the next couple of years. So I'm in paradise now, so I'm going to take advantage of it.
When I've listened to the last 2 interviews, and now this is the third recorded interview, I can't help but think we've covered a lot of ground.
Right.
From kind of somewhat philosophical things, bars, songwriting, hookers. It's really, really run a great variety. But I always like to end, I just give the guests the stage, an open forum. You can say whatever you want. Is there anything that we left out? Anything you would like to say to the people out there?
Well, I want to thank everyone who's listening to this. They've probably been to my shows, or they may come to a show, and to think that these tens of thousands of people have given up their evenings to come see me play. Some of them recently have driven as much as 6 or 8 hours.
Wow.
I can thank countless people that come see me perform, and I'm so appreciative. Tonight's a good example. We're barely over COVID. There are going to be 60 or 70 people that cram into this beautiful little room, even though we're not fully out of this thing, and they're going to give up their money and come and possibly risk getting a mild, COVID case. And, it just blows my mind. And I had to give a little speech at my 50th class reunion a couple of weeks ago. And I said, grateful. I'm so grateful for everything that's happened to me and the people I've got to work with and the people I've got to entertain. So that's really it.
Well said.
Well, thank you for having me on again.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Pleasure is mine.
Check out scottkirby.com. And I just want to thank the Roasting Room here in Bluffton, South Carolina for the venue.
The Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.